Okay, we're live. That is, okay, now we're live.
All right.
Nice work.
Hello, everyone.
Deep breaths.
Thank you, James. We're starting a few minutes past 3 o'clock today as technology was not cooperating, but our fearless county administrator was able to find the path forward. So, that being said, I will call this meeting to order. And let's, just for the listeners, go around the table and watchers and just say who you are.
I'm Bill Gabler. I represent District 5, which is Lutsen, Tofte, Schroeder area, and points south of that.
I'm Chris O'Brien. I represent District 4.
James Yorkie, County Administrator and Luddite.
Mary Somn is representing District 3 and Board Chair.
Chris Skilden representing District 2.
Lawrence Doe, District 1.
Stacy Hawkins, Cook County Commissioner, District 2.
Ann Sullivan, Cook County Commissioner, District 4, and the alternate for this group.
The first item on the agenda is to approve the February meeting minutes. I would entertain a motion.
I would move that we accept February meeting minutes.
And a second.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, the minutes are approved unanimously. And then approve the HRA Executive Director hire. This is truly a milestone moment for the HRA. We had second interviews with 2 exceptional candidates on Monday, just the other day. James has sent around to us the totals of our scores. We can begin the discussion. Comments? Bill, you want to start?
Well, I'd make a motion so that we can properly do the discussion. And that motion would be to begin negotiations with Jason Hale as Executive Director. I'm basing that in part on the relative scores. We were lucky to have 2 really good candidates, so and it actually was fairly close in the judgments, but that would be my motion to at least get on the floor and entertain discussion.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right. And then discussion. Any thoughts? Any of you'd like to share?
I would have to agree that the 2 candidates are really excellent. I wish we had 2 spots because they were really excellent. And my scoring came in with 3 points of each other. The final tally, there was a little bit wider gap than that. But I found that the person that actually, the way that I looked, one person I really felt their capacity to learn quickly was pretty well proven. However, the other person seemed to have more applied experience directly applicable. And my personal choice would have been one or the other, but I felt like ultimately I had to choose the one that would serve this board and the goals of this board the best. And that's kind of how I went with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, they didn't make it easy. So, that's all I have.
Okay. Chris?
Well, similar to Lawrence, I mean, I was, I think, really impressed with each of the candidates. I think they had, complementary strengths in and experience, and so that's what made it, for me, a very tough choice. And like Lawrence, also came down to about a 3-point margin in terms of my own assessment of the 2.
Bill?
My assessment was a little more divergent than that. I just thought that one candidate had really direct experience and in their interview responses gave very specific examples in response to the questions and looked more ready to go. I do agree either one of them would be a good hire. And I remember Chris commenting on the reference checks that he did of both candidates. That is, if I remember it, Chris, you said if you were hiring and it was your business, you'd hire either one of them. The references were that good.
Yeah, the references were fantastic for both. Checked out, so.
You know, and if we're talking about points, we might, that a perfect score would have been 80. So a gap of 3 points is a pretty close margin, that was a total score possible was 80 points. So.
Yeah. Yes, and I would echo what you all have said, and like Bill, I think the biggest benefit that Jason brings to the position is the fact that he's already working in the HRA environment, and so the learning curve won't be about that. It will be about Cook County. And I know that everyone in Cook County is going to be delighted to educate him. And help him to create networks and hit the ground running. So, James, anything to add?
I'm just no, I don't have anything to add. I would agree with everything that's been said. I think you have two really excellent choices here. Either one, I think, would do a fabulous job in this role. I think there's a little difference in experience. I think that was evident. But, it's unfortunate that we can't hire both, frankly.
Is.
So.
Truly.
Could I also make a comment to thank James for organizing that whole effort and both the rounds of interviews and the scoring matrices and everything? It's a first-class job, I thought. And I think we're well served here and being able to make a decision.
Yeah.
So maybe just some other discussion about logistics. I believe James has indicated that it's probably for Bill and I to reach out to Jason and make the offer. And I wonder, what is the offer?
Well, I think that's something that we can discuss offline. I don't think that's something that this full board needs to determine. I mean, we do have the parameters that are in the year one job description in terms of salary. And then the rest of the salary and benefits package, I mean, it's kind of it's a known quantity.
It
because
follows the
county.
salary, yeah.
So.
Okay. All right, well then, the three of us can have that conversation, and we will reach out to Jason as soon as possible and let the negotiating begin. Oh, after we vote. Any more discussion? Lawrence, did you?
No, I just want to say, what about the vote?
Yeah, okay.
Call the question.
Call the question, all
That's
right.
the
All those in
class.
favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Again, a unanimous vote by this board.
And
Thank you.
and will you and Bill also reach out to Haley then?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we will. And let her know that as soon as we find another salary, we'll get back in touch with her. Yeah, I am really thoroughly, and I would also just add, for all of those who applied to this position, we had a lot of amazing people, both distant and local, who applied, but the housing experience of the two that came into the final round was the thing that really set them apart, the exact match to what we're trying to accomplish here. So thank you to everyone who submitted your applications, and thank you to the community for your support of this whole initiative. Okay, so with that, we are going to discuss the revisions to the first-year work plan.
You want me to just talk through?
Chris, yeah, is that,
Yeah, we should acknowledge Chris did all the heavy lifting on this, on the revisions, so.
It was just, what I did was didn't try to add new content. I really just took the document that we had shared last time and just reformatted it, and I guess with an emphasis on taking things that were, with a focus on the work plan itself being comprised of a number of task areas, and each of which had some identified deliverables just to set expectations. And then on some of the things like the background information on Go Cook County's prosperity agenda, which sort of is the underpinning for the spirit of the HRA. Put that in the appendix. Put some other move some of the information, the current housing initiatives. Put that in the appendix. Put other HRA background information in the appendix. So hopefully it provides a, it's a little bit daunting list of things to get done, but it was sort of in the spirit of what we had reviewed last time, but in a little bit more focused on the tasks and deliverables. And as it's indicated, it's a draft, and so I don't have any pride of authorship, but others have suggestions on how to make it even better.
well, thank you for doing this work. I think it is very helpful to restate the items with some measurable understandings.
Do you want me to go through the, I can go through the work plan and deliverables, but I think everyone's got a copy, so they.
We do,
Yeah.
Maybe I would ask if anybody has any questions about any of these
I have a
items.
couple of comments on it, and I wonder if we did go through it just quickly, if there was things like, for example, on the first one, the deliverable is the meeting packets, and I'd really like to get those a week before the board meeting. I think the last-minute delivery of information that we need to take to heart is a little bit difficult, and with this new director, if that could be a schedule on there where they could give that to us a week ahead of time, so we really can have a chance to read it over and be thoroughly versed in it. I don't know if a week is the right time frame. It was just sort of arbitrary, but
Yeah, the requirement for open meetings is within 3 days, typically.
Okay.
So, and I do apologize for this being late. There's been a lot going on.
No need to apologize.
But yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for example, the county board meetings, the meetings are on Tuesdays, and the agenda has to be posted by the end of Friday, basically. So it's not a week, but it does provide some additional time. And I realize that you need more time to consider these.
because I think as this unfolds, there's going to be more information that a lot more that we're going to need to be versed in. And I think some study time is going to be important.
So the 3 days is the legal requirement for open meetings, but this board could set 1 week if that's what we wish to do.
I guess
And I think maybe you're right, initially, with everything that everybody's learning together, a week is a good amount of time.
There's trade-offs, because the other trade-off is that if we're meeting monthly, then a week ahead is a quarter of the work period, and so there's a lot that happens in that last week. So I think the 3 days might be a better measure, so that we're not playing catch-up in terms of having a meeting packet that reflects the way things were a week ago, and then there's another week's gone by. And so,
All right, so if we're meeting on Wednesdays, 3 days ahead of that is Monday or Friday?
It'd have to be Friday.
Friday.
Otherwise,
Friday.
it'd be Sunday.
Right.
Right,
Okay, all right.
okay. That sounds good. Fridays, we'll start with that and see how it goes. We can discuss it.
Okay.
That gives you the weekend.
Yep. Okay, so Chris, or Bill?
Well, just another thought. A lot of the agendas of boards I've been on is a new business, which are items that hadn't been on the agenda but could be introduced at the meeting. It's an opportunity to raise your hand if you've got an issue that, with 3 days should be pretty tight, but every once in a while, something comes up. So if we could just have a standard, one of the last bullet points on an agenda is new business, that'd be helpful, I think.
Yeah, for example, today, agenda item number 6 is other business. I know other as needed is some typical language or new business that comes up. So some language about that, I think that.
Precisely, and as you adopt your
Yeah.
agenda, you can, someone can make a motion to add an item. Stacy and I find that done very regularly, and that can be added onto the agenda. Then you approve the agenda and can discuss it at the end.
Okay. Well, Chris, if you want to do a quick walkthrough,
Yeah,
or.
okay, so the next was, had to do with communications, and so that the establishing and managing resources for sharing HRA information with the public. And the idea, I think that's a pretty important early priority, given need for transparency and stakeholder relationship development. So I said, the deliverable, I figured was a communication strategy. I didn't put a time frame on here, so that would be something to be discussed. Is that something to be done within 3 months or something like that? But develop and present to the board a communication strategy to share information with the public, including schedule of public meetings, traditional media, as well as developing a website and social media. So, so I'd offer I think it would be a good idea to put some milestone, some timing in there, maybe within, I think 3 months seems like a reasonable time frame to do that, but I'm open to other suggestions. Any comments on that one?
Sounds good.
Okay. Then the next was we talked a lot about need for for educating ourselves and gathering together, kind of compiling information about what the history of affordable housing is in Cook County, and the document includes a list of several ongoing projects, and I just thought it would be a useful deliverable might be to prepare a case study on each of the housing projects in Appendix 2, including what were the development objectives, who were the stakeholders, what were the milestones, how was it financed, what was the operating history, and what's the forecast for the project. And then those case studies could be included on the website and just presented to the board as information. And again, no time. I'd be open to suggestions on on A, if that's a good idea, and B, if it's what a reasonable amount of time would be to pull that together.
Seems like it might be worthwhile to scatter that out over maybe the first year if it was prioritized with what we think are the top priorities in the county.
Mm-hmm.
So the list on that appendix are several, there's a number of different structures.
Right, that
So
makes
he
sense.
could dribble those out to us, maybe one every meeting or something, however.
That makes sense. I'll just, third was we had language about gathering countywide data to identify homelessness, rehabilitation needs, and again, the deliverable. In a lot of these, you'll see that where it was about gathering information, the deliverable was a summary briefing to be presented to the board and put onto the website.
Chris, is rehabilitation of the person or the housing?
I don't know. I think I took that language from the original draft. I'm not sure exactly what that.
I don't know if it's our job to rehabilitate people. I think it's our job to rehabilitate housing would be my assumption on here.
We can just add rehabilitation of housing stock.
I'm pretty sure that is.
It's probably based on building condition also, to the extent that that's known. And
Yeah.
I wonder if some of this might also dovetail in with the new housing study, so that our executive director can take some advantage of that work, and I know that'd be really helpful.
Yeah. Rehabilitation. I'm dating myself. It brings me back to Alice's restaurant.
That's going back.
Rehabilitate yourself. And the foster relationships with townships and Grand Portage. We've talked a lot about how important it is for the person to be out and about. And so I just threw out there attend 2 meetings per year for each township in Grand Portage, and solicit in those meetings input on prioritization of housing needs in each township in Grand Portage, and then present that to the board in a quarterly update. That we talked about, it sounds like this for foster relationships with regional partners such as List Duluth, Northland Foundation, Habitat for Humanity, and there the deliverable would be just a summary briefing on key regional partners. I think Jason had mentioned in his interview that he had pretty strong existing relationships with those organizations and was planning to leverage that. This is kind of a bigger one, to just create the Hra Advisory Board. And again, this is something we've talked about, made up of those with interest or experience in housing. This group will make recommendations to the EDA Board for approval. Should that be EDA or
HRA.
HRA Board, yeah. I think I cut and pasted. Those who currently participate in the Joint Powers Housing Work Group could make up the initial committee. So the deliverable would be deliver recommendations for selecting HRA Advisory Board, solicit Advisory Board members, and convene Advisory Board kickoff meeting. Again, no timing on that, but I don't know what the...
Right. And maybe I would add that we should consider the other community members who applied to be on the HRA board, to invite them to this advisory
That's a great-
committee.
Yeah, that's, yep.
I think that and the housing work group also, I mean, there are people that have devoted a lot of time to that effort that would, I think, be pretty helpful here,
Excuse me.
too.
Yeah,
And that's what this
I
is.
listed them as making up
That's-
the initial committee.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
There it is.
Yep. Then another, again, in the category of research, develop available housing finance resources, and that's kind of deliverable, prepare a briefing on available financing resources and develop recommendations for, on applying for financial support for HRA initiatives in Cook County. And then finally, put together a 3-year strategic plan for the Cook County HRA. So identify and prioritize housing category needs in the county, available resources, partnerships, and deliverable there would be first propose a strategy development process, and second, draft and final 3-year strategic plan. So that's what I put down. I mean, one of the things that as I'm reading through it, that I'm conscious is not on there is new housing. It is breaking ground for new housing. So I don't know. I'll throw that out there. Is it reasonable to put other metrics that we would want to prioritize?
Jason himself recommended one of the first things he would do is inventory any county property that was in like a tax forfeiture state. And I would imagine if he got a hold of it, he would figure out something to do with it. So that could be added to the work plan, is get a hold of that information and do something with it.
So have some project in motion within the first year. Is that what you're essentially saying?
Right.
Let's dig a hole and start building with something.
Well, or, at least have property to invite proposals for
Okay,
would be a good lower hanging fruit than
okay.
the impossible task
Of actually getting something built the
ground
first year. One could hope.
So what do we say? So deliverable would be what? So gather information on county forfeiture properties and generate ideas for property for redevelopment.
Yep.
And that should be something that'd be done pretty quickly? Is that what you're thinking?
I think so, Chris, yeah.
And I'm looking back again, Chris, at number 3.
Yep.
Past, current, and pending long-term rental housing projects, also home ownership, rental and home ownership
Rental,
projects.
okay, yep.
Because some of those are intended to be home ownership.
Which one are you on?
3.
Number 3,
The research past and current
and
housing?
pending,
gathering data,
that
but I-
says long-term rental housing.
Oh,
It's
right.
also home ownership
Okay, right.
development. And
Do we want to say the deliverable then as a I'm going to the one on the county forfeiture properties. Present board, initiate redevelopment, plan for those properties. I'm struggling for what would be a reasonable metric, a reasonable goal.
Well, I have a question. I believe that tax forfeit property was on the county board agenda yesterday. Do you guys have something to tell us about where the county's at with that before we expect the executive director to build something on tax forfeit land in the first year? Where's the county?
We are in the process of developing a policy.
Okay,
So, but there is a way to get a list of tax forfeited parcels.
okay.
So, but I would think it would be not just redevelopment, but development and redevelopment.
Yeah.
So maybe the deliverable is inventory first, and then understand the policy and how it would relate to.
Collaborate with
Yeah,
the county
yeah.
on the development of the policy and potential projects is where I think it might be,
Yeah.
right?
Does the county need the new EDA to come over there and lean on the county in any way? Just wondering. No? Okay, all right.
We're good.
Oh, good, all right.
We all work together quite nicely.
So, and then just keep the board, again, apprised, keep the
Right,
board apprised.
so basically, we're saying, indicating that the deliverable will be, a report to the, a inventory and then a plan for development and redevelopment of those properties. And at this stage, not going to put a hard timeline in for breaking
Right.
ground.
The county board has been really aggressive in working hard on creating policies for some new things, and, no pressure, but we all want
But
the
if we
same
could get
thing.
it done by next week, you'd like it.
The snow's melting, we want to dig a hole.
And then one other thing, Chris Skildum, you've mentioned in the past, and I want to make sure that we include the language in here to, and I don't know exactly where it fits, but communicating with developers and contractors. So whatever, maybe that's again in number 3, that's where the developers and the contractors might come in.
3 or 7, we could solicit developers and contractors to be on the Hra Advisory Board.
Yeah, either way, just as long as we make sure that we,
Well, and like, for example, that the investment group we just are learning about.
Right.
Picture them as a developer, and there's contractors that want to help, and there's developers that need contractors. The ED could be a good link to all those, so.
right, it's that
Connecting those
network
dots,
of
yeah.
all the
So-
potential partners, so.
So now Chris just needs to word that in a deliverable.
Right.
Yeah, can I interject something on that? It seems to me like to add the contractor and developers, I wonder if we should add a 10th item. Because we've got some pretty specific things on finance resources, on community partners, on various sources and stuff, and it seems to me like the contractors and developers are a primary element, and
Yeah.
perhaps should have their own.
Yep, yeah, I'm fine, and we're up to 11, but, so shall we say something about, reach out to all contractors in the county?
Not even just in the county.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
potential partnerships, explore potential partnerships with contractors and developers.
Yeah.
And it's, you can't make people want to come here and build something, but if there are other people out there that we can attract, first of all, of course, local and,
Yeah.
more regional
Local and
or.
regional. Yeah. Because
I'm not getting it quite yet. I mean, I just
It'll
wanna-
come.
It'll, yeah.
Right?
It's come so far. 1 through 9's been great.
Yeah. So we want, is the goal, then we want this person to be able to pick up the phone and know, and have a network of contacts that includes all the contractors, or is it that there's partnerships through me a little bit? What's the goal for, are we looking for something more, a more formal partnership?
Maybe it's more like an invitation or a reaching out, I don't know.
Is it creating a directory of willing contractors and developers? Is that,
Well, for example, if you don't have a plan, but you want something to happen, typically you invite proposals. So I can imagine his job as being inviting proposals from developers and contractors for the development of, said property. Like we somehow in the
Okay.
work plan, we know that we have this land here.
Got it.
Let's invite proposals for it.
Got it,
Then
okay.
it would give us an opportunity to look at the highest and best use or best proposal.
Okay, that's great. So,
Yeah, because, we can go chase after funding for housing projects, but typically you need to have a good plan in place before a funder's going to give you a
Exactly.
grant. You have to
Yeah.
know what you're going to build, where you're going to build it, what's the estimated cost of the project. So it's kind of working with developers and contractors to create the grant applications to go get the money. So they're integral to the
so you have to have a plan
process.
first, then you talk to the contractor and developers, then you talk to the financiers.
But if you don't have a plan, you can invite proposals. So
Right.
if you have.
It can go a number of
You have a
ways.
buildable rectangle.
Right.
And we sit in this room and come up with a plan, and we put it out there. Nobody wants to build our plan. But you might have 100 people respond with their bright ideas that is their vision that could fit within our bigger vision. That's why you're inviting proposals.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's for a piece of raw land.
sure.
Yeah,
Or
okay.
a renovation or
Yeah.
redevelopment.
Okay.
Right.
okay, so I'm getting 11A is establish a list of all the contractors and developers that we, or have a publicly available list of the contractors and developers, and second is to solicit input from said network, for example, through an RFP for proposals. I mean, there might also be, Chris, what are your thoughts on having does it make sense to have a specific event, like a mixer? Where
A builder's workshop.
a workshop, yeah.
If it was producing something, otherwise, it could be a
Yeah.
fun social gathering, but until you have like a venue for a proposal, there's really
Okay,
no.
let's stick to let's stick to the.
I would think that the director of building a more personal relationship with as many contractors and developers as possible would be a better alternative than just kind of going public.
Yeah.
And really that's, they've got to have some judgment as to which in this group might be capable of this particular development. And because these development proposals, there's going to be risk involved. Somebody's got to put in time, effort, and money to create proposals, and we want to recognize that there is risk involved, and so we want to make it as easy as possible for them to make a proposal. But a lot of that's more just conversation. Yes, an RFP it works, it's out there in public, but working kind of to try to tailor and what the proposal will be is, then people are putting in time, and time's money, so.
Right.
It seemed to me like Jason talked about having relationships with builders in the Duluth area and all the way down to the metro. And I'm assuming that'll all come here also.
Come with them. The other thing in the public process, using public dollars, depending on the cost of the project, which typically are going to be above the threshold, you have to have 3 bids. So it's good to have a
Which
list.
I'm just going to add, because we all need to know this, that is absolutely treacherous and detrimental to getting projects done in our current economy
I know.
and construction environment. Absolutely 100%. So just, if we get a proposal or several proposals that are not apples to apples because they're just that, they're not based on architecturally or engineered specs, then you're not comparing apples to apples. And by the time somebody's taken the time to come up with a really good idea that works for their company, when you try and compare it apples to apples to another company, nobody right now will be interested in
Right.
submitting a second.
Well, you don't have to accept the lowest bid.
Right.
You can have language in your request for proposals that enables you to use other criteria
Sure.
to make the decision, but you still have to have them in the file.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
but we'll just see how it goes. It's been an interesting process so far, and
Right.
I know, I totally
I just
get
have
that.
to,
know.
I have to call it out. 'cause
I get it.
Unfortunately, the federal and state regulations are always behind the events going on in the field. I mean, the field events change much quicker than what the laws and regulations do, and that's a stumbling block, is what you're saying.
Right.
All right, so, back to the work plan, any other?
Could I just want to raise an idea here that you can take or leave. This is already a very complete first-year work plan. And I don't want to scare our new ED off. But we've talked a little bit about the fact that there are already in Cook County vacant homes that are owned by people who live out of the county, and the homes are sitting empty. We also know that there are some, and I don't know what this looks like, but there are some apartments that are not always occupied. And I think there would be value in exploring the idea of creating a clearinghouse of information about rental housing that may not be easy to find. And I'm not suggesting this be part of the first-year work plan, but I think there's some need for something like this, based on what I've heard. Like people who are looking for rental housing don't always know where to look. On Facebook, you're always seeing people saying, hey, I just got a job in Cook County. I need to come, I need to move up here. Does anybody know of any rental housing? And there doesn't seem to be a good way of connecting those folks with housing that may be available, even if it's just short-term. And so I think there's value in exploring the possibility of having some kind of clearinghouse to connect people with housing. But probably not a good first-year plan.
Well,
It
and I
might
think,
be.
Maybe it should be.
It
That
could
could be
be.
a number one priority, or number 1.5 priority.
one of the reasons why I think maybe there isn't a clearinghouse for available rentals is because there aren't available rentals, generally speaking. As we've discussed, it's very often somebody knows somebody, and that's, word of mouth happens very quickly. But I think it's a good idea. And I think, we won't know until we say, okay, here, post it on this place, and then we'll see what happens. I think that's a great,
It's worth a try.
yeah, it's definitely worth a try.
I
For
talked
sure.
with a young person, just happened to overhear a conversation in a public setting, and I told them who I was and what committee I was on. And they're trying to buy the house next to where they live here in the community, and the person that owns the house died a year ago, so they're in contact with the daughter. And this person owns 6 houses in Cook County, only one of which this person occupied, and now that person has died and the house is sat empty for a year, as one example.
So is that task that we had discussed in a previous meeting about contacting owners of vacant houses? I think we said there's in excess of 40 just in Graham Ray proper here. Is that a task that could be part of
Yeah.
this work plan? I mean,
Yeah.
just reaching out, just making awareness to people that might be living in another state, having an empty house.
Yep.
It's possible the new executive director might have to be involved in that process themselves right from the get-go, and be really interested in finding out what those, where those houses are.
All right. Any other comments or questions on this? All right, so Chris,
I'll take another, I'll turn the crank again. And just
Okay.
get another draft out.
and then if you can, what kind of timeline do you think you might be
Tomorrow,
able to?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. And then if you can send it to James, and James can send it to Bill and me, because
Yeah.
Chris can't send it, there would be 3 of us in the email then.
Yeah, once the draft is updated, I can send it to the whole
Can
board.
send it around to the whole board, and because we should have it in hand when we can reach out to Jason for initial contact that we want to begin.
Yep.
But it would be good to have this when we meet with him in its next form. Okay. Okay, very good.
I think Chris ought to get an extra cookie for that effort.
He's got the whole bag.
He's already got
Sorry.
I got one.
You got one, okay. All right, so affordable housing in Minnesota is,
Excuse me just a second. The budget, can I have a comment on the budget before we move on?
well, yeah,
Okay. I want this thing about levying the tax aspect as a way of funding some of the HR work. How does that happen? We don't have to answer that now, but my question is how does that happen? What's the time frame, and why and when would we do that? That's something I'd like some information
the
on.
county budget is set once a year. Preliminary budgets are submitted to the county from agencies like this in July. And then it becomes a part of the discussion at the county board level.
Okay?
The preliminary county budget is set in September. After that, the budget can't go up, but it can go down. And then it's voted upon in December for the following calendar year.
Okay.
So the next time we will submit a budget request for levy will be in July.
In July. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Good question. All right, then. Affordable housing in Minnesota, we're going to skip that for today. We're going to reschedule that for a later meeting. And so, the next item on the agenda is local real estate information session. I did send out emails and had some exchanges with a number of Cook County Realtors. A couple others maybe were going to come today, but we'll see what happens. In the meantime, Mike Raymond is here with us today. Mike is the broker and owner of Red Pine Realty, and Mike, we're delighted that you could come and join us today. And I would invite you to, we do expect a call in. We'll see if that call comes. Someone else who wants to
I'm reaching out to
participate?
her right now.
Okay. But Mike, if you want to go ahead and start sharing, and then I do have some written comments from some other realtors that I can read before or after.
I'd love to hear them.
You want to hear what I
Sure.
got first? Okay.
Then I won't repeat myself.
From Jake Patton, I had asked in one of the emails, what did realtors think about, I've heard of this in other areas, where a 1% tax is added to the sale of homes above a certain value, so like over 500,000, and then the revenues from that tax go to a fund that is for affordable housing or workforce housing or whatever definition. And I did have a discussion about this a while back, and Auditor Powers indicated to me that this, I believe he said, would have to be enabled by the state in order for us to do this, but I'm still curious about it. I wanted to get more opinions to see if it's something that we would ever want to pursue. So this is Jake's response to that question. In my opinion, the tax should not be assessed against buyers or sellers specifically, but based on the homestead qualification. If a homeowner can prove they reside full-time in Cook County, or if they're contributing to the long-term rental market in Cook County, they should be given a tax credit like homestead. But if a homeowner occupies their property for less than long-term, their property is assessed an additional 1% of the property value per year. Oh, per year. I was thinking of one time. The 1% should be used by the county to purchase and develop a long-term rental complex or neighborhood. Used for rentals only is my recommendation. Thank you for hearing us out. Then from Kathy Hahn, thank you for inviting us. Part of it is just I have a commitment, I can't be there. In reference to the 1% tax on properties over 500,000, are you suggesting a one-time additional tax or 1% hike on the yearly taxes? It appears that the majority of the properties that are being sold for over $500,000 are second homes, and in more cases than not, likely on the vacation rental circuit. I believe these properties are already paying more real estate taxes through their status, so I'm not sure how I feel about increasing the taxes even more. Either way, an extra one-time tax of $5,000 plus, at closing might be more bearable, but raising taxes by 1% on those properties on a yearly basis is more than doubling and sometimes tripling their taxes. Yeah, no, I was thinking of a one-time thing. And then from Larry Dean, when it comes to building in the city or the broader county, it seems that sewer and water costs are the biggest issue. Question, how much more can our city sewage plant hold? Do we need to start planning a new system that's not landlocked? I do not have as much of a vision for land outside of the city, but if we could find affordable property, could we create a sewer and water district such as Castle Danger Sewer and Water District in Lake County? Available properties. If the city can handle more sewage, why don't we talk to the school district about some of the land behind the school or across the street from the Free Church? I've been told that there are a lot of wetlands there, but no, there's not a lot of wetlands anywhere in Cook County, right? But it seems we could undergo some mitigation to make it work. The school has a vested interest in providing housing for staff. Another area is the land past 3rd Street and 2nd Street. It must be 3rd Avenue and 2nd Street.
Off the end of 3rd and 2nd,
Yeah.
kind of above the old Harbor Light, back up in
Yeah,
there.
up there, where the road ends.
Yeah.
If grants could connect city sewer and power, this would be one of the only expansions that the city could do. Maybe connect with a road that goes up behind the Harbor Light. Exactly. One other area might be the land behind the Gopher Cabins. Again, a sewer and water issue. Type of housing, I know many folks think in terms of single dwelling units to purchase. I think a combination of rentals and owned units would be wise. Aitken has a development that is 20 years old already. I believe it's called Riverwood Estates. It has connected townhomes with some rentals also. These are single-level homes that senior and young families own and rent. As much as I struggle with parts of the one-roof housing model, I think we need to invite them back to create some more housing in apartments. I think they told me they still have land available for building. That is correct. Everyone owning a house, I'm a realtor and I love selling houses, but we need to tell folks it's okay to rent in an expensive community. Rent in Cook County is still a good deal compared to many tourist areas. And those are the written comments.
Oh, I'm glad I have an active bunch of agents in my office.
You do
that's
have
good,
active
yeah.
agents in your office. Thanks to all of them.
And I like Larry's comments, and we've talked about that as well. So I've been at this for 32-ish years, and this is not the first time this has been discussed. It's the first time we've had an authority to deal with it. I would suggest that it's less about you guys building some kind of housing as it is to freeing up the land. There's a lot of individuals looking to buy land and build, and they can make it happen. Lots of developers, local entrepreneurs, people that would be willing to do whatever it takes to make a buck or solve a problem. To Larry's point, I've had that IDS 166 school property for sale years ago, and it is heavily wetland. So that type of property, and there's a number of larger tracts of land within the city limits primarily, and of course the county doesn't really want to deal with things within a 2-mile radius of the county or the city limits. But I think if we could access water, sewer, and even put an assessment on the lots, I think people would buy those lots and solve some of the problem. I think that's the fastest way we could make an impact. Water, sewer is a big issue. Septic systems are a big issue. The county had been involved, and I don't know where this stands, with doing some trading with the federal and state governments with some of the tax or the school lands and all. And so if we could consolidate more property down near the highway, closer to the town centers, Lutz and Tofty, Grand Portage even, 8% of the county is available for us to do something with. And we're all here because we like that fact. We don't want to be in a heavy density area environment. We're here for the woods and water. But our zoning, the county zoning, is maybe lax in its the inability to have a smaller lot size. We've got 2-acre zoning along the Highway 61 corridor, and then as you move inland, it's 5 and 10 and 20 acres. And again, a lot of people want to see that stay, and I think maybe it should. But around the communities or town centers, there's really nothing wrong with maybe a half or quarter-acre lot size. The city of Grand Marais is working to reduce the 10,000 square foot minimum lot size in town to 8 or something less. So those kind of things I think could help, and I think your body could work as a lobbying entity, pushing on the county commission to reevaluate its zoning law and work with the city council on the same kind of thing. Years ago, we'd plat land, and it was quite a bit easier than it is now, doing a plat of 1-acre lots or half-acre lots. In its effort to ease some development problems as far as the cost of development, the county put in the administrative subdivision rule. So now, instead of, and there's a couple reasons for this comment I'm going to make, but it's easier to do a 4-lot subdivision. It's more streamlined. You can work through the county quicker, faster. A plat has become a pretty laborious and expensive proposition. The survey costs are higher. A huge issue is the wetlands, and solving a way to mitigate wetlands and buy wetland credits. It's a real big deal right now. So when you get into all those efforts of a plat, which is taking a large tract of land and chopping it into smaller lots, and being viewed by the county and making sure it all meets the size of the roads and the streets, and all those things have to be up to a standard. It's a monumental effort for expense right now. So I haven't seen a plat, and maybe have been a few, but I haven't seen a plat in many years. And I think it's easier to try to slide through a 4-lot subdivision, and then if you wait 2 years, you can take the bigger chunk you left over and re-subdivide that. You can kind of work through the administrative subdivision process. So that's an impediment, I think, to smaller lots, cheaper lots. And again, I think there are plenty of people out there, if they could buy a $20,000 or $30,000 residential lot, they'd be thrilled to death and they'd move forward, even if it had an assessment on it for the water sewer. So again, this body could maybe, again, lobby for a change in the zoning that maybe would allow smaller lots in some areas. The neighbors aren't going to like it, but I think there are spots where it wouldn't impact neighbors, and it could be done. Maybe the platting process needs to be revisited. I remember when Wes Hedstrom was a commissioner in this county, he used to go to the Twin Cities and the state capitol regularly and lobby for things that were pertinent for our county. And I think the wetlands is one of those that I don't know where we're at with that, and if it's been pushed at. It's been talked about for years, but I think we're not Brown County or any of the counties down south with private land and private wetlands and farm fields. We've got wetlands everywhere. And I think we should be lobbying our congressmen and senators at the state level, if not the federal level, that some of those rules are, and I think we could, again, work with other counties in the northern tier of counties here to push back a little bit on some of those regulations that don't really make much sense for our community. There are many wetland areas here that could be filled or mitigated in a way that would be much easier for a developer to handle and not so expensive. and get some, just getting a road. You might have a county road and a wetland, and then there's a lot of good land behind it, and just putting the road through the wetland can be a huge impediment to developing. So I'm not pushing for development or developers, but there is land here in private hands. People would gladly make a profit and develop it, and that alone, I think, would solve a lot of our problems beyond going towards, building a project and hoping that it'll solve housing. A lot of people would prefer not to live in some kind of a government-funded housing project. A lot of people come to Cook County because they want to be in a single-family home. And we are, I think, missing the boat on a few of those things that could be done that would expedite development of some land that an individual would buy and gladly bring in a prefab home or some kind of build a mini home. People are industrious, and they will find a way to get here and live here if they're given a chance at some land that's not $50,000 is kind of the bottom tier of property right now. And then developing the land, again with the wetlands, if it's not near, and maybe the county could get involved with the city and come up with as Larry mentioned, another water treatment plant. Maybe one needs to be in Tofty and Lutsen, and maybe there's places to put those that would serve an area that would enhance the ability to develop some areas that right now are just out of reach of water, sewer, and the cost of the gravel in this county is terrible, as we know. And so maybe there's another little sideline. I'm rambling here, but maybe the county fathers could find ways, and again, lobby the state and the federal government to give us access to more gravel closer to the highway corridor, so you don't have to truck it for a half hour one way or the other. Those little things add up. And so right now, the land is too expensive. There's none of it. The development is expensive. And of course, labor and materials are higher up here. That's a tough one to work around. But again, I think a lot of people would build their own little cottage in the woods if they could get the land at an affordable price. And I think there's options to make that happen. Quick example, but many people will know Lenny and Leonard Sabania. They had land up Sabania Lane, and they took a 40-acre tract and put 7 lots in it. And they did that through, I think, 2 administrative subdivisions. And those lots were listed. They paid to put the road in there. They paid to put the power and broadband in there, did the survey, all that. And those lots came on last year, 7 of them, for priced in the mid-30s, and they all sold quickly, and relatively quickly, within 6 months or so. And 2 of them are local people going to find a way to make a house in there for themselves. And the other 5 were out-of-towners, young couples looking for a place in the woods. So I don't know how you can mitigate that issue of out-of-towners wanting recreational property. It's definitely hurting us. But again, if you had a half-acre lot size in a platted development on the edge of town with water, sewer, that's not necessarily what those people are looking for either. I think, if the property was designed and looked as if it was something more urban, let's call it, I think those out-of-town people looking for the cottage in the woods wouldn't be steered towards that property anyway. And certainly the people that want to live here, work here, provide the jobs here would look at that. I've got numerous clients, people I know that have land or have ideas to develop land, wanting to do something to solve the housing shortage. And it's just the lack of affordable land, I think, is the big thing. And so it's supply-demand. If we can increase the supply, I think that'll bring the price down. So that would be my first attack. And maybe, again, there's not been a strong, I don't think, lobbying effort against the state on wetlands, the federal, state governments about access to their gravel. They've got more land than we do as a county, and there's access to gravel. There's probably private gravel pit potential around the county as well, but then we run into all the issues with developing land into a gravel pit. So some of that could be, I think, addressed with zoning. The fastest solution, I think, is these lots that are within the city limits that could almost reach city water sewer if this, our water treatment plant capacity will handle more. I've talked with Mike Roth about that in the past, and the city has been not inclined to want to spend money. But my argument is always assess the lots, like every city, and I think people will pay an assessment with their taxes. It's not out of this world. It's much easier to make a payment if you have a job than it is to fork over $25,000 for a septic system, even with the county program. It's if we can make a system where there's a way to make payments and get into a property, I think finding a way to put a structure on it can happen much more efficiently than we think. Those are my ramblings, but I'm open to questions.
Yeah, I get, you might have just answered it in the last question, but I was curious with the focus. The focus seems to be on properties that can tie up to city, city water and sewer, and what's the cost trade-off with affordable housing? Are there affordable housing initiatives that rely on septic or rely on wells? What are the trade-offs between going one direction or the other? Presumably cheaper land.
I think what I hear you saying is, so we've got, like, there's a piece of land out here in Crawford right now above the highway, and it's zoned for 2-acre minimums, and somebody could go in there with a proposal for like a cluster development, but they're gonna have to put in a shared septic system. One well might do it. It might take a couple of wells, so that the cost of that might not be outlandish, but it's upfront cost. Whereas if the city goes in and brings water sewer to a bunch of the lots on the west side of town that are already platted, they're all there, and the city reduces its required footprint for a building site, then I'm paying so many $100s a year on my taxes for the water sewer versus a developer having to come up with that. And again, same difference, you'd spread that cost amongst the units you're creating, but the developer's got to come up with the money. So the city can sell bonds and can get the money together and put the infrastructure in easier, quicker, simpler, I think, than a private developer can.
First cost issue.
That's really a good point. Can I ask you a question? My understanding is that the electric company is going to put up broadband and electricity up the Arrowhead. What's that going to do to the property development up that way? And based on what you said earlier about young folks and people out of the area wanting a place in the woods as opposed to somebody who's living and working in town, so to speak, that seems like that's more of that. But it seems like that's going to potentially open up some land for development up that way.
And I'm glad you said that. I just noticed that on my notes. I was going to bring that up. So, again, the zoning in those areas are like 20-acre minimums, but that's not a big deal. It's a 20-acre site out by Powers Lake Road is no more expensive than a 5-acre tract overlooking the lake near town here. There's a balance that way. So, if and when power and broadband go into these areas, people will want to live back there. They're already doing it up around Tom Lake and some of those areas from the last infrastructure that went in there. The issue will become roads and access in and out of there. And guess who's going to get asked to constantly improve roads and take them over? And the county doesn't want to do that, nor maybe should they. But the special taxing district that's on Iris Creek Road seems to be working pretty well. So if there's a way to get the roads taken care of by contractors and with a little bit of, again, bump on your taxes to pay for it, I think people will live back there. And somebody working in town here, a fry cook, they would gladly drive. When I drove an hour each way to McFarland Lake when I moved up here a long time ago, but we'll drive as long as gas prices aren't outlandish. Quite a ways to go to work and make a living. So that spread into the hinterlands up here could solve some of it for some people. And aside there, I've had a house for sale for a year up at Tom Lake with broadband and power, and for I think it was priced at $349, and it took a lot longer to sell than a similar home within like 10 miles of town, which go like hotcakes. So there's still a little bit of worry about being that remote. And that was it is on the Irish Creek and Tom Lake Road. It's maintained by a contractor. So you can come and go, but you're 50 minutes or an hour to get to town every day. So that it's not as desirable, but I think it could alleviate some housing issues for people if I could find a 20-acre chunk affordable and put a house on it. They would do that. And the broadband, again, makes some of that way easier than it used to be, because you can actually contact people or work from home. So,
I just am really aware of the housing pressure that's coming up with the, I think they call them environmental migrants, people that are moving for environmental reasons away from the coast.
Right.
And also this being able to work remotely. And when I read an article, it seems like Duluth in the upper Midwest is targeted, it's got a bullseye on it
yeah,
for this kind of growth,
Yeah.
population growth.
we've got fresh water and lots of land, and it's attractive. And again, we're not living here because we want to see it paved from border to border and lots of people. So we have to be very careful how we proceed. But there are areas, I think, that are already, like within the city limits, platted. It's just the lots are wet, or have no access to the water sewer system. And more of that could be created if, again, some trading. There's a few chunks of land. I know we don't want to go up on the hillside and see a bunch of homes, but there's some county land and some state and federal land that could be exchanged, and it might be close enough to the city centers that we could put a water treatment plant in a few of these locations and serve a half-acre lot or 20 half-acre lots and solve a lot of problems. So I think I would hope you guys would be working towards those kind of bigger issue or bigger picture goals: water, sewer, how to get the utilities in, how to get the roads taken care of. I think a lot of it will take care of itself faster than you think it would if people could get access to that land. I don't know why there's not an apartment building or a condo. You know, people desire condos here like crazy. Not the Lake Superior rental condos, but residential condos. Those never get built. Apartments never get built. People talk about it, but again, there's lots of impediments for a developer to make money quickly. It's a long process, and there's not a lot of, again, zoning for it. There's a few multifamily zoning districts in the city, around the city limits, but not a lot. So again, there's a zoning issue maybe the county needs to look at. Is something the county could do there.
I just want to respond to a couple things that you said, Mike. One, I did have a really interesting conversation with Megan Myers a while ago about the school district land.
Yeah.
And then COVID, and then, that just got put on the back burner. But I'd be interested in reaching out to Megan and talking some more about that. Maybe some folks here can meet with the school board and see what's what. I don't know the land itself, but... And then there are some of us who make the trek to the Capitol once a year.
Good.
We got to go back last week for the first time since 2019. It was the last time we were there, and it was great to be back in the Capitol, and some county people were there, some economic development, community development kind of folks. And one thing that I heard at the some of our meetings this year that I've never heard before, and it was so encouraging to me, people saying out loud, our rules and our policies and our programs for one size fits all don't work. And to hear some elected people in St. Paul say that out loud to us citizens was like, let's go lobby about that for sure. Like you said, the same rules can't be
Right.
It doesn't work. The same packages don't work. Tax credit, housing programs for tax credit for low-income housing, we don't need 100 units of low-income housing, so we can't apply to that program, right? So help us, find the way to, and we're not alone. Cook County is unique in many ways, but we're not totally alone in that differences. So, we'll see.
Good. Well, good luck to you all. It's a monumental task, but We can whittle away at it, and I think you can make some headway.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think every little bit helps, and I think that, continued dialogue with people like yourself that have knowledge of potential places where those people that are telling you, like, well, I would help if there was a way forward, then let's find them the way forward. Let's
Right.
learn what we have to do, and
Well, I'm open to questions, and let me know anytime. Happy to help,
it's great.
and good luck. I hope you can make some change here. It's been a long time coming, and it's a daunting task. It is.
Did the phone call come ever?
No, I emailed Sue and I sent her the number.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what happened.
All right.
Mike, are there other parts of the state, or are there other communities in other parts of the state that are kind of known but haven't done a really good job of working with realtors and solving some of these problems that we're talking about?
I don't know of too many, really. Over the years, I've done quite a bit of development in Lake County, and I think it's pretty equal to what we have here. And again, 5 or 8 years ago, things were simpler. Things just continually get more complex, and there's just, everybody wants to have another rule in place. And it's understandable, but sometimes the rules, again, with the one-size-fits-all thing, doesn't always work, and the big picture gets lost oftentimes. But and so, no, I don't have a experience with anywhere else that I've heard of that necessarily does a different job or better job. But I think we tend, in these small rural communities, to sort of clone what's going on in the suburbs or the bigger cities, and I don't think it fits. You just have to have a little slack here. And again, we don't want to see it, just let loose with rampant development that's not planned and thought through. It's not why we're here, but sometimes the regulation gets in the way of rationality, sanity. So
One thing that happened recently with the 2 proposed projects in Tofty that came to the county for the tax abatement, and then have both applied to the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency for funds to help with those costs. The person who manages that grant program, the Greater Minnesota Workforce Housing Grant Program, reached back to those developers and said, why are your costs so much higher than everybody else on their applications that came in from all around the state? I was like, exactly.
right.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And isn't it great that we were creating some awareness around that? It's.
Hi, Sue.
Hi,
Hey there.
I finally got the number.
All right. Sorry about the difficulty. We've got you on speakerphone, and the meeting is live streaming, so.
Okay, thank you.
And so I don't know if you've been listening. We have Mike Raymond here with us. I read
Yes, I've been listening.
You have been? Okay. I read some written comments that I received from other realtors. If you have some comments you'd like to chime in right now, you're welcome to do that.
Sure, yep, I'll try to keep mine separate from what other people commented. First comment on the tax idea, I would be pretty strongly against that. Sellers are already paying commissions, which they already try to whittle that down by 0.5% or 1% with us on a regular basis. So that would be, I think it'd be tough for people to swallow more taxation because they already pay a deed transfer tax at closing, and perhaps part of your government advocating could be to see some of those funds dedicated to developing housing.
Of the which funds?
The deed tax. that
The deed
sellers
tax?
pay.
Okay.
Yep, at closing.
Okay.
And then my experience, I've only been here, this is about a year as a realtor, but I've been in real estate for 18 years in the Twin Cities. But one of the things that I have found here, and I think similar in the Twin Cities, is the need for seniors to have alternatives. There's a lot of seniors living in homes, and they would live somewhere else, but they have nowhere to go. So they want to stay in the community, they would sell their homes. And so if you're looking at prioritizing what type of housing to build, I think a senior building would go a long way toward freeing up other homes for younger people to move in. And younger people are very willing to do, sweat equity, fix up, things like that. So I think senior housing would be awesome to provide here. And then I will email, because I've been involved in the Twin Cities a lot in the real estate associations and partnering with nonprofits and government agencies on funding and supporting affordable housing and also closing the racial equity gap in housing. So I have organizations that I can email that are good to partner with. And I did see in your work plan that you mentioned Habitat for Humanity. And I will say that Habitat had a pilot program in the Twin Cities that I think if it's successful, they could go state or nationwide with it. But it might be worth calling Habitat Twin Cities, where they have funding where they're such a well-endowed organization that they will not let anybody pay more than 30% for their home ownership costs. Habitat makes up the rest. And they will give people a grant money of whatever it takes for them to get into that home. And so they're a really strong organization with lots of assets. The other thing is talking about whether you can, what to do about people from out of the area coming in, buying up places, which I am one of them.
We're glad you're here.
But I'm intending to make my home here and be a part of the community and contribute. And I do talk with potential buyers that want that. They really want to move. They have this love and attraction to the county, and they want to come up here and help contribute. So, incentivizing the behavior that you want, I think, the outcomes that you want, is really effective. And, there's a lot of programs, and it goes through funding that's tied to home ownership and owner occupancy. And so there's 5-year, 10-year programs where if you stay in the home that long, then it's a forgiven loan. If you move out before that period, then you pay, it's prorated that you pay back when you move out. So there's a lot of incentives to encourage when a community or a nonprofit is developing, to encourage home ownership in that place to people who are going to contribute to the community. What else do I have? The other thing is I talk to a lot of young people, and I would encourage in your advisory board and in the future on your HRA board to get some young people involved. So young people, and Mike touched on that, have very different ideas about housing than we boomers do. And they're going to be they express that they are going to be much happier with simpler living, smaller places, shared communal areas, or having smaller homes, and having a big garden area, having a place where they can have a workshop or art space. And so I think getting some of the creative alternative ideas, because the young people are saying we don't need a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. So I think getting some of those ideas from young people about what their housing needs are is a good idea. And then going back to the tax idea a little bit, there is a lot of the vacant land, and I don't know the laws about taxation, but I think people buy the vacant land, or they have in the past. They've bought it in Cook County on speculation, and they want to make money on it. And so the tax rate in Cook County compared to other places that in the Twin Cities could buy land or buy investment properties, the tax rate is relatively low, making it really attractive for people to buy land and hang on to it. And if the tax rate could be higher for, I don't know, vacant properties or high, I don't know how it could be structured, but I've wondered if that could be a source of tax revenue for non-homestead or non-owner occupied, non-vacant properties. And then another idea, a thing that I have found since being here is I get a lot of calls from people who have sold a business or sold their big family home somewhere, and they're looking for a tax shelter, the tax advantage, and they want to buy an investment to avoid taxes. And they say, well, maybe I'll use it once in a while, but then I'll have it be a vacation rental when I don't want to be there. And I know that fund is starting up for investors. And I wonder if some of those people that want to buy property here would be attracted to be investors in that fund. So if there's a way to connect, and again, I don't know with our agency laws and our ethics rules as realtors, but if there's any way for us to connect people with that fund, or just for the county to do a lot of public promotion of that fund, that could be a good source. It could possibly be a good source of housing funding. If someone, and I know there are, REITs are not, you can't do a 1021, but there's another type called a DST, I think, that can be used in a 1031. Or it's like crowdfunding. And I can send you information on that.
Great. Yeah, that group just had some outreach events on Sunday and Monday, and several of us know several of those folks. We can certainly explore, again, we'll have to learn how that works in realtor ethics, but we can, people know people, so we can make sure that is available as an option if it's something that can be helpful. I'm sure there's no limit to their open arms to welcome investors into that trust fund, so. Anybody have any questions for Sue before she?
Great. Thanks a lot, Sue.
I do think it's a great idea to get young folks involved in it. That hadn't occurred to me. Years ago, as a contractor, we had a round robin of us older contractors with a bunch of young potential buyers. And I learned a boatload of how different, 3-4 decades away from me, there's a whole different thought about housing and who they would hire and all that kind of stuff. And I was quite impressed by that. So I think that's an excellent idea when we're developing housing plans.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
We can organize all kinds of community input gatherings when we have a staff person.
Sue, and the other thing that you said about the seniors would sell homes and move into senior housing, Silver Bay has got a project like that, that they're building, one of their developments is building houses that seniors will move into, and then the smaller homes that will be starter homes for the community. So I think that's a good idea also.
Yeah. The other thing is another resource. It could be the Minnesota Realtors Association. So I've noticed that you're doing some research and gathering information and things like that. But they have partnered with some the Minnesota Home Ownership Center. The Minnesota Realtors Association has partnered with them on doing some research. So, which probably means they just provided the funding. So they could be a source of funding for research. And also realtors have tons and tons of data. So I will, Mike offered to help, and if you're looking for data, any information on sales and anything like that that I can offer as a realtor, I am more than willing to be of help.
Great. Mike, you have something?
I was just going to say, a real successful project in this town, it's probably 15 to 20 years old, was the Homestead Cooperative. I know within the last, 5 years or so, they had talked about trying to do another one, but they apparently backed off it, and I don't know why. But it might be worth following up there to see why.
Yeah.
Could have been, again, no land to do it. Kind of rings a bell with me, but, that's been really successful. There's a waiting list to get in there. It does solve the senior housing issue, and it's private ownership. So it was real successful. We could use another one of those easily.
Yeah, yeah. I received criteria, guidelines, application information for a great grant program that's available through the Minnesota Department of Health, I think, for senior housing. And that was one of the things that was left on my things to do that I didn't do. But yeah, I'm bringing it with me here. So that is the one thing that I've heard people talking about, and this goes back to zoning, is if the seniors sell their homes, is there a way to keep it in the owner-occupied or long-term rental and not enable it to go to short-term rental? And, you know, again, it's hard to control that stuff everywhere, but maybe there are places that we can look at or ways that we can see if we can't help address that need through zoning somehow.
Is there differential taxing today for homesteaded versus non-homesteaded properties? But that's...
It's significant.
But despite that, it's still...
It's still happening.
I
yeah.
think we could do that with a deed restriction, couldn't we? Could we do that with a deed restriction?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe education is part of that effort. Maybe people don't realize some of the options they have available to them in the way of restricting land when they part with it. You can deed restrict it, you can do covenants.
That's a great thing for some of these public meetings with the executive directors, going to hold public informational meetings. That would be, a tutorial on some of that would be really excellent. Good idea.
Yeah, I think the opportunities are there. It's just finding the path.
And you'll find you're going to gore a lot of oxes. There's a lot of sacred things you're going to push up against people that won't want to budge.
Yeah.
And it's, so that's the hard part. That's the politics part of it.
I noticed both the county commissioners are smiling and nodding.
Yeah.
Do you know what he's talking about?
I'm ready.
Well, it's clear there are just a myriad of tools around that could be put into practice, and some could be improved through some lobbying and really getting a handle on those that might be more appropriate for Cook County would be one of the jobs I hope that the executive director would focus on, and we would too, actually. That executive director is going to need some help. And, both the candidates have talked about drinking out of a fire hose, as they, in a job like this. And so I think this is one of those all hands on deck moments where we really need to be committed to what we've been appointed to do here, so. But thanks, Mike, for being here, and Sue for being on the phone. Appreciate it.
Thanks for asking.
All right.
Appreciate it. And again, I'm available if anybody has questions about anything, if I can answer them.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good
Thanks,
luck.
Mike. Thanks, Sue.
All right, so I think, Sue, we're going to let you go off the phone. Maybe you did already.
It looks like yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, I think, speaking of drinking from the fire hose, right?
Yeah.
That was a lot. That was great.
That's wonderful.
Excellent, excellent information.
What was Sue's last name?
It's Nichols, Nichols.
Thank you.
So, with that, is there any other business to come before the board? All right, then. Our next meeting is Wednesday, April 20th. On our printed agenda here today, it says it's at the county courthouse, but I have reserved a large room at the Cook County Higher Ed because I believe we're planning some sort of an informational training session with the Minnesota Housing Partnership and the EDA and the EDA Board and the county commissioners. And that's all the definition I have about that right now, but it's part of that memorandum of understanding that the EDA has, and we've requested it, and it's going to evolve. We will be meeting with Minnesota Housing Partnership, I think, next week, to further define what that day is going to look like. So we'll keep you all informed as that becomes more clear. So just keep that in mind. We will be at the same time from 3 to 5 p.m. I don't know if the training session is going to take up the full duration of our hour and a half or 2 hours, whatever, as we plan that agenda, it will become more clear. But I'm hoping that people might be willing to commit the full 2 hours, because there's going to be a lot of good exchange between all of the local people that will be present in the room and the people from Minnesota Housing Partnership that are going to be bringing us some good info. So stay tuned for more about that. And then a motion to adjourn.
Also move.
And a second.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, very good.
Thanks, Mary.
Thanks, Al.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, folks.
So, are we off?